Welcome, everybody, to the coordinated physical activity webinar. And we are pleased, it's the Coordinated School Physical Education Activity Programming webinar. I'm very excited to introduce your presenter today. She is passionate about physical education. This is her heart and soul in her career. Our presenter today is Miss Judy Lowe Bianco. She is the supervisor of health, physical education, and nursing services in South Orange, Maplewood Schools in New Jersey. She currently is the Physical Education Administrator of the Year for NASP and APERD. She also just found out that she is a $1.5 million grant winner for the PEP grant, and it is unbelievable, but this is her third PEP grant that she has been awarded in her career. Please listen to this wonderful webinar and hear her passion and provide you with some wonderful, helpful tips and resources to increase physical activity at your school. Welcome, Judy, and welcome everybody to the webinar.
Dun, 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 dun. Hello, everybody. Good morning if you are on the East Coast, on the West Coast. Good afternoon if you're on my coast. And I don't know what time it is in the middle of the country. But I welcome you all so much, and I thank you first for taking time out of your very busy schedules to be here with us in the middle of the day to talk physical education, physical activity, and to talk about our passion in our schools, because it only takes one champion, one school, one child at a time. So I cannot wait to talk to you today about coordinated school physical activity programming, and I thank you so much. I did indeed win a PEP grant, $1.5 million, and we're really looking forward to making things happen. And the foundation of this additional money is going to be to reach out to stakeholders in my community and outside my physical education classroom to be able to make sure that kids get the recommended daily physical activity that they need. And isn't it just a timely thing that today we're in this webinar talking all about it? So let's get started. We have a lot of goals, not just for this webinar, but in our profession in general. And it's no secret that there's an obesity epidemic. We've been hearing about this for quite some time. It's something that physical educators have known about forever, that the rest of the country and all the other stakeholders have found out about in the past 5 years or so. We know that increased physical activity is part, not all, of the prevention plan to be able to decrease that childhood obesity. And that lays on the shoulders of many physical educators across the country. And what our folks outside the profession are realizing is that, of course, schools are an ideal place to be able to promote physical activity beyond the physical education setting. One of the things that we've noticed over the past decade is that we realize that although quality physical education is an integral part of what goes on in schools, we find that it's not enough. And so when you step out of your gymnasium to be able to offer opportunities in your schools and in your communities, we really get closer to being able to make a dent in what has been a really, really serious epidemic with childhood obesity in our country. So what is the vision? It should not be a secret that our children need 60 minutes a day of physical activity in order to make it a habit-forming thing that they do. And physical education doesn't provide that kind of time every single day for us to get that done, which is really the premise of a coordinated school physical activity program. And what we find is that a coordinated, comprehensive approach to this is the most effective way to get them there to 60 minutes. That means that we rely on physical educators to be that champion and share what it is we know and start to advocate what it is we know that's best for children's health and engage just about everybody around us to make that happen. So I love this slide, and it's just, a little joke that I tell, because if the bum is numb, the brain is going to be the same. And you see there a person seated in a chair, and John Medina of Brain Rules, he wrote a fantastic book that tells you the 10 brain rules to make sure that your brain functions appropriately. And one of his major rules, of course, is exercise. But he also goes off on a tangent about how a chair is the absolute worst learning environment for a child, because it means that our kids are sedentary, and if they're sedentary, their brain is the same. When we think about the impact that physical inactivity has on everybody, not just our youth, it becomes clear that our mission is so incredibly urgent and that people are looking at physical educators in such a different light now in 2013 than they did when I first graduated college last year, 20 years ago. So the way that people saw a physical educator 20 years ago, we are certainly gaining and garnering a lot of respect now than ever before. And we know these things to be evident in terms of the slide that I show you here, that we know that if you're not active, you're going to gain weight, possibly have heart disease problems. It affects your stress level, contributes to many disorders, but also has an impact on children, especially children who are suffering from ADHD, inattentiveness, and behavior problems. But most of all, I think we've gained the most attention in our profession because principals and supervisors and superintendents around this country are starting to get the message that when kids are active, they learn better. We are sitting on the most important thing about what we can do to improve academic performance in the schools when we are able to say, if your kids are active, they will be better learners. How powerful is that? And so I find that, just like the Andrea Gale here, we are in a perfect storm. And so many demands are placed upon us in relation to what it is we are doing in our schools. We always have budget concerns, and physical education is always at risk of being cut. We've got this childhood obesity thing on our shoulders. We're worried about the Common Core and the reasons why physical education is not part of that Common Core. And we've got incredibly more demanding teacher evaluation programs in place across the country, in New Jersey in particular, where we've got mandates now to make sure that teachers are evaluated more often and making sure they're doing appropriate assessments. And it's very, very high stakes stuff, and it's very stressful, and it's all coming down upon us at once. But one of the great things about this perfect storm is that we do have solutions. One of those solutions is let's move active schools. Now, I'm hoping our participants today have heard that phrase because it's become quite popular and quite evident that the National Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance has partnered with a ton of different entities to make sure that we have the tools in the schools that we need to be able to engage classroom teachers, principals, administrators, supervisors, parents, and kids, so that when you walk into that learning environment known as a school, it's not just in the gymnasium where our kids are understanding the value of what it means to be active. Let's Move Active Schools is a roadmap to be able to make sure that wherever a child moves in a school, they know that that teacher, that adult, that classroom is geared up to know that we value physical activity here, that we know that it makes you a better learner, and that you need to get out of that chair. Get out of that chair every 17 and a half minutes or so, as per the research that says after that, your feet will start to send a message to your brain that says, my human is not moving. It must mean that I have to go and rest now. So classroom teachers can really serve as the people who are the catalysts for this comprehensive approach to physical activity, and they need to know this research. And one of the places I send classroom teachers initially to be able to get a little sense of how important it is to go back to that reference from before, John Medina's Brain Rules book. Has lots of great stuff for teachers, and in New Jersey we have professional learning communities. I have a lot of classroom teachers who use that book as part of their professional learning community. So it's really been a powerful read. It's an easy read, it's a short read, and it packs a lot of power for us as physical educators. Because you know, you have a lot to worry about in PE, and you can't be everywhere. You can't be in every classroom. You can't be out there at recess all the time, and you only have a limited amount of time with your kids. So being able to impart knowledge and resources upon those who could be your partners really becomes key in this idea of the comprehensive school physical activity program. So Let's Move Active Schools is a huge, huge initiative backed by several partners, and I'm showing you a slide here that really underscores that the whole nation is involved in this. So not only your national AFERD, but the Alliance for Healthier Generation, Childhood Obesity 180, Nike is a huge supporter of the President's Council on Physical Fitness, Sport, and Nutrition. They have resources available to teachers. And if you don't get anything else out of this webinar, besides my bad jokes, it would be to make sure your school is registered as a Let's Move Active Schools. And I'm going to reiterate that a couple times in this webinar, because the resources afforded to you that are completely free through AFERD really help you with a toolkit for being able to get started. So there are 5 focus areas in Let's Move Active Schools. And of course, the Let's Move campaign through First Lady Michelle Obama's office offers us the ability to say, let's use those resources and that momentum to be able to really focus on the types of activity that we need and where that activity is going to happen. So the first and most foundational piece of Let's Move Active Schools is a quality, developmentally appropriate physical education program based on national and state standards. You must start there. If you don't pass the test on number 1, forget about number 2, 3, 4, and 5. There is plenty out there that helps us to know what it is we need to be able to do to be the very best physical education teacher that we can, and to be able to understand that in order to do that, it takes time and commitment and an ability to know as much as you can and to become a student of your profession in order to help your children. You know, one of the things I always say to people when I'm out all over the country talking is that when I became a teacher, I began to realize very quickly that you need to give up who you are, of yourself and of your time, giving of your resources and your knowledge and your enthusiasm. You give it to your kids so that when you walk up to the schoolhouse steps, you give up yourself and give it to children. And that is not easy. And it is a very few wonderful, outstanding champions like the ones on the webinar today that can take the time to say, I will know everything I need to know in order to help my kids be better learners. That's what I mean about quality physical education. So you really need to celebrate yourselves when it comes to being a student of your profession, because if you're not a student of this profession, you can't be a teacher of this profession, because once you shut off your own learning, you shut off your ability to teach. So then the number 2 focus area is physical activity during the school day. This is the tough part. Those classroom teachers who think, let me just drop my kids off in phys ed, and this is my prep, and I don't want anything else to do with this except for doing my prep. Long gone are the days where classroom teachers have to be able to just say, physical education is my prep, especially at the elementary school, because what we're looking to do is make sure that they are our partners. You know, it just takes a little subtle set of differences in your schools to be able to have that classroom teacher pick their interest. For example, I was just in an observation the other day watching an elementary phys ed teacher, and at the end of the lesson, the teacher came to the door, and the kids were very physically active, and they were ready to go back to the classroom. And the classroom teacher gestured that the kids looked tired, so she'd go easy on them in the classroom right after physical education. What an opportunity for me! I said, excuse me, classroom teacher, did you know that these children's brains are more focused and ready to learn right now than they will be for the rest of the day? And so I say, don't give them a break, give them a test, because they will do well, much better than any other time during the school day. It's those little things that you're able to do because you know about what to say to teachers that really pique their interest in things like this. So I encourage you to know as much as you can about physical activity in the brain, because that's the way you engage classroom teachers, and it certainly is the way you advocate with principals and school boards, because once you say that you are sitting on the answer to things like the achievement gap, you're sitting on things like low test scores that can be made higher, by saying that if kids are active, that will improve, boy, will you get people to listen. The third focus area is physical activity before and after school. This can be a tough thing in some school districts, you know. One of the reasons for that is because a lot of community partners aren't engaged with the schools. It takes a major effort, it takes some time to be able to find those community resources and be able to say to yourself, geez, you know, what are my kids doing? Where do they go after school? What are my kids engaged in? What do they choose for physical activity opportunities before and after school, even on the weekends and in the summertime? If we don't know what kind of activity patterns our kids are engaging in, then it becomes a little harder. For me in my South Orange Maplewood School District, I've been able to reach out to our local YMCA and our recreation departments in town and say, you know, what kind of programs are you offering our kids, and in what ways can we collaborate so that kids know deliberately and purposefully that I am in discussions with you to make sure that the whole community embraces the health and activity of every child. And it's really been a great coordinated effort, which is why that word comprehensive and coordinated becomes so important, so that when a child moves about their day, whether it's in school or after school or on the weekend, they know that the adults around them embrace and feel that it's important for them to be healthy. And so what we would hope, and based on what the research tells us, if more people get involved with the health and activity of a child, those children will begin to internalize those messages of activity and make them habits way later into life. It's the same with nutrition. For those of you with children, you know, you try to feed your little ones certain types of food, and they may spit it out the first 10 times. But eventually you can invite new foods into a child's diet if you give it enough times to help them learn how to appreciate a different palette of food. It's kind of the same thing for physical activity. And if we bombard our children from all different facets of life with these activity messages, we find that they're active longer and that they sustain a love, an internal love for activity throughout their life. So the fourth one is family and community involvement. You know, the idea of physical education homework comes to mind. We don't do enough of that. We don't do enough of that. And what I mean by physical activity homework is that our children are able to go home and share with their parents, yeah, that they have a math test, that they have a social studies assignment. But then could you imagine the look on a parent's face if their child comes home and says, I have physical activity homework, I have to go in the driveway and do 10 jumping jacks, do a jump rope, and have 30 minutes a day of physical activity after school for a week. And then maybe even log it in on something like an ActivityGram program. Wouldn't that get parents curious? Hopefully not mad, but hopefully it'll get parents curious. And so what are we doing in our schools, and what are you doing in your schools to engage family and community in this idea of getting kids active? You know, one of the first things that come to mind in my district is the PTA newsletter that goes out in each of our elementary schools, and how our phys ed staff has a little corner of that newsletter. And we talk to parents about tips for fitness. We do a calendar of fitness activities for the month, a myriad of things that help to engage families around being physically active. A child will do whatever their environment dictates that they do. And so if a child from a very young age has a family that is sedentary, they are more likely to sit and be that sedentary child, which is not a good thing, obviously. So we want to be able to break that cycle. And in some ways, I think the child coming home to educate their family is even a more powerful message than anything else. So I offer that. Last but not least, what have you done in relation to staff involvement with getting people physically active in their buildings? Now, I have to tell you, with this PEP grant, you could imagine that staff is very excited about it, but staff members that are not my physical education teachers are even more excited. They want me to offer Zumba classes. Zumba, out of nowhere, has become a very popular thing, along with spin classes and aerobics classes from the 80s. My staff members want to do everything they can to be active with their kids. And it's a great, great situation in terms of our staff being role models for kids. So one of the first things I did with my first PEP grant was to be able to afford staff members their own pedometers so that they could use them in the classroom, and have walking clubs with the staff members. I've got a couple schools that do competitions with staff, and whoever walks the most steps in a month maybe gets a prize. And we have some walking tracks out the back of each of the elementary schools, and it's become quite the fun event, sparking a lot of activity at recess and after school for teachers. So it's been a lot of fun. So you can see here, if you look at the 5 focus areas, this is a community effort in terms of making sure that kids get messages from all over in order to be more active for life. All right, how are we doing so far? You can't answer me, but I hope you're all doing good so far, because I'm talking to myself over here. Are you clapping? I don't know. So at the bottom of this slide, I want you to make sure that you write down the website for Let's Move Active Schools. It's www.letsmoveschools.org. Such an incredible resource that goes above and beyond everything I talk about in this webinar to be able to set you up in a way that really embraces this idea. All right. So if you just take a rough estimate of what 60 minutes a day of activity or close to 60 minutes a day of activity may or may look like in your schools, it really depends, of course, on a quality PE program because every state is different. So I just use this example in the second row here. But if you had your classroom teachers doing 3 times a day brain breaks that may last about 7 minutes each, you can gain about 21 minutes there. And think about your own schools now. If you have physical education and it's 60 minutes per week, let's say, or as I say here, 60 minutes per week, 12 minutes a day, for example, per the week, that's 12 minutes a day, 60 minutes a week. So now you add that on top. And then let's take recess, and we're going to talk about recess a little bit because I think it's the most underrated part of the day that's got to be overemphasized. If you're getting that recess time and it's meaningful, safe recess time, and you can get 15 minutes a day out of recess where kids are active and choosing activities that they enjoy, that's another part of the day. And then we've got before school and morning activities that could give you maybe 10 minutes a day, let's say while kids are waiting to come into the school building. So even a rough estimate of what I've just said there can bring you up to 58 minutes of total activity a day. And that doesn't even include what's going on after school for our kids. Many of them will get up and over that 60 minutes. But if we lay the groundwork and the foundation in such a way that we list what is happening in our classrooms and what resources can we give to classroom teachers, we can get there. We can do this. We can get there. 60 minutes of activity a day for our kids. I just want you to know my slides are freezing. Because if something didn't go wrong, this would be a very boring webinar. Okay, so let's talk about schools. Schools are a very incredibly overtapped resource for a lot of different things. We are asked as school personnel to solve a lot of problems. And, you know, why not? Because it's a place where kids can come, that they spend a lot of their time, that, you know, we get to know our kids and we get to know what they're going through. And I don't just mean physically, but emotionally and socially as well. Schools are the foundation for a lot of things, not the least of which being able to impart knowledge and skills in physical education, but also to give them that time called recess, where they have the opportunity to apply the skills they learn in PE. Now, one of the major statements I'd like to make about recess is that recess is a child's personal time. What I mean by that is, the research tells us that children should be able to choose whatever activities they wish in the downtime that they have that is their own time to make choices. Whether that be a child that makes a choice to go outside, sit on a log and read a book, or be involved like this young lady doing double dutch, or playing Foursquare, or be in an organized game that they might have learned in physical education. Whatever that is, it's got to be student-driven and student-run and student-decided. And that's a very lost piece about recess, and one that, as physical education people and physical activity advocates, we've got to make sure that classroom teachers and principals understand that to pull a child out of recess for, let's say, homework, or to pull a child out of recess for disciplinary reasons is not a developmentally appropriate practice. And I know that those of you on the webinar are saying, but Judy, you don't understand. Oh, yeah, I do. And I go through it every day in my district. And principals don't really like me much because of the way that I tell them, look, you know, I get that they need the extra help, but we've got to find another way, because the mounds of research on how important recess is to a child's day far outweighs pulling that away for disciplinary reasons. I mean, the major best practice in our area is never to punish a child by taking away physical activity, especially during recess. So recess, I find, is a major untapped opportunity for us not to go out there and teach a physical education class, because that's not what we're talking about, but to be able to impart knowledge and skills for kids so that they may actually choose to be part of an activity at recess with their friends in a social setting that mimics physical education. But it has to be their choice. So let's talk about the foundation of all of this, quality physical education. You know, I can talk to all of you because you're champions and you're here today and you're spending an hour of your day with Judy LoBianco, and you know the importance of a quality PE program. I always end up talking to the champions. And I'm going to uncover a dirty little secret today just for you, that not every program out there is a quality physical education program. And as champions of this profession, we need to start to have those very, very difficult conversations with our actual professional colleagues about what's going on in their classrooms. Because you're not just a physical education champion for your own children, you're a physical education champion for every child in your school and in your district, and for as far as I'm concerned, across the country, because there's not enough of us. The pool of champions does not outweigh those that will sit back and give children an experience in physical education that is horrifying and something out of the 70s. For example, we know that dodgeball is a thing of the past, that waiting in relay lines is a thing of the past. We know that tag games where kids are out and sitting are a thing of the past. And what's difficult is the dirty little secret of the fact that it still goes on. And it takes a lot of courage, and it has taken me a lot of courage as a supervisor. You could imagine that now I'm evaluating teachers based on these things, and the hard conversations have to happen. And sometimes that comes easier from a colleague in a physical education setting than it certainly does from a supervisor who now needs to hold teachers accountable for not allowing this type of physical education to go on one day more. And so there are quality PE program resources that I cite in this slide here from NASPE. AFERD has brochures on what's called opportunities to learn. And in there, it not only talks about elementary and secondary minutes that allow kids to get closer to that 60 minutes, but also talks about what facilities should look like, what the optimum class sizes should be, what kind of equipment should be used or can be used, and what kind of support teachers need to be able to instill upon their kids a quality program. They talk a lot about, in the NASPE opportunities to learn, about age-appropriate content that's varied and enjoyable. You know, fun is not the objective of a phys ed lesson. A carefully planned out, skillful lesson that allows kids opportunities to learn that results in them having a lot of fun is closer to what we mean. When I say appropriate instruction, we're talking about qualified health and physical education teachers that are able to teach their content, and for those who are not qualified to be able to get the tools that they need to teach the content appropriately. And in New Jersey, I speak only for ourselves, we pretty much have certified phys ed people teaching K through 12 physical education, but it's not like that everywhere else. And so whatever state you are in, we have to take a look at that and say, look, if our classroom teachers are teaching physical education, we've got to arm them with the necessary tools to make sure, number one, no kids get hurt, but number two, kids are actually learning something at the end of that lesson that they did not know before. Regular assessments. I'm going to spend a minute on this because this is a tough part of what we do. We need to be able to measure growth in physical education. We tend not to do that. And I say that very harshly, and I say that as a tough person, because this is where we fail in our profession. We fall flat on our face. Across this country, there are physical educators that simply throw out the ball, and the game is the objective of the lesson. And if kids are busy and happy and good, they must have done a great job today. We fail at our attempt to be able to give kids corrective, specific, individual feedback that actually helps them grow in their skill. And so when you say to a child who performs the overhand throw, good job, what is that good job? What is it about that overhand throw that you absolutely loved? When you say to a group of students, after teaching the overhand throw, at the end of the lesson, when you've got 20 or 30 kids in front of you, I still see some of you not following through, This is not the kind of feedback that helps a child, because when you say many of you are not following through, I'm the child looking at you saying, does she mean me? Does he mean me did a good job? It is very imperative that we make sure we ask questions and discuss with kids so that they all can answer the questions that you are asking them. That's the kind of regular assessment that we want to see in physical education, so that it's not just a couple kids who always raise their hand because they know the cues of throwing, because they've known the cues of throwing ever since they were a fetus. No, we want the kid who is sitting there saying, I'm really not sure about my performance, can you help me? And so when you send kids off in your daily physical education classes and you have them engaging in physical activities and games, that's your moment to go up to individual students and say, bend your knees more, get your feet shoulder width apart. I like the way you bent your elbow. That's your moment. And oftentimes I go into classrooms and see teachers that back up to the sideline and just keep score. Nobody cares about the score anymore. We care about the skill inside the game. So think about that when you go to do assessments and use rubrics and use the resources available to you in terms of making sure your kids get from one place to another. I'm a little passionate about that one. I'm really sorry. So where are these tools, Judy? Show me where these tools are. How do I know I have a quality physical education program or not? What about my curriculum that's probably been sitting for 10 years and no one's touched it? Or what about the new curriculum that we've just adopted and we need to put into place? Will it be just a piece of paper on the shelf and I'll just keep doing whatever else I've been doing because that's the way it's always been done? No, we need to be courageous. We have to monitor PA levels during our physical education classes so that each time you meet with your kids, put a timer on a kid. Get a stopwatch out and be able to say, I'm going to choose Johnny today and see if he is moderately to vigorously physically active during the period, at least 50% of that period. That is the way we find out whether or not our kids are being able to move more during our classes and reach that target heart rate or that MVPA. MVPA, for those of you who may not know, is moderate to vigorous physical activity. And that's the kind of activity where the children have that little bead of sweat rolling down their face. They're a little rosy in the cheeks. On a heart rate monitor, that would be target heart rate. We want that for at least 50% of every physical education time so that we can get that MVPA attributing to that 60 minutes a day of physical activity that kids need. So think about that. We also have assessments for your curriculum. Is your curriculum a quality curriculum? The CDC put out a fantastic document that is completely free to you called the Physical Education Curriculum Assessment Tool. If you Google it, it'll come up and you can get it in an Adobe file. It's a lot of pages. And basically, it's not a curriculum. It's for you to assess whether your curriculum is a quality curriculum. What resources are you using that contribute to a child's overall health? In what ways do you have a variety of individual, dual, or team pursuits for kids? Those kinds of questions are asked. What resources are you using in terms of textbooks that may or may not be good for kids and are developmentally appropriate? A great cool tool is PCAT. If you're involved in health education, CDC also has a health education curriculum assessment tool, and that's called HECAT. So again, I look at that and I say the CDC has really stepped forward in trying to give teachers resources to be able to make themselves better teachers. Another one of those is the School Health Index. When I got my last PEP grant, I had to do a School Health Index for the reporting out, and it was a really cool 20-plus question test that was asked of kids randomly throughout the school year. And the kinds of questions for kids were, think about the last week of your life. Did you have fruits and vegetables? How often did you have fruits and vegetables in the last week? Did you have them every day? A couple times a week? Did you have them at all? A question about how much sleep did you get on average a night? How much physical activity did you get after school? Do you play outside with your closest friends? Were you active on the weekends? How much TV did you watch this week? And it really gets you to put your finger on the pulse of how active your kids are, and that's the School Health Index. It was a very, very cool resource for me to be able to use with kids and get them answering questions. And one of the great things about the PEP grant was that we were able to broaden opportunities for kids so that at the end of the 3-year period last time, we showed growth in these areas. We showed that kids were eating more fruits and vegetables, that they were watching less TV, that they were active more toward that 60 minutes a day that we're looking for. So these are great tools to be able to use that give us evidence in your schools that kids are growing and learning. There's also the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, the Healthy Schools program. That is a great resource if you want to Google that, in terms of so many community partners across the nation that want to help you and are even offering grants and making those available for you to be able to get to a quality program. All right. Hey, this is working. That's cool. All right. So let's talk about this physical activity during school thing. We need to make sure that these activities reinforce and link classroom content. So we've been being asked as physical education teachers from the beginning of time, do you integrate math, social studies, and language arts and science into your curriculum? Oh boy, for 20 years I've been asked that. You know, when principals go to interview phys ed teachers, and sometimes they don't know what questions to ask, they ask, how will you integrate Common Core? Common Core is not a dirty word. Common Core could actually help our cause more than anything else can, because we are the Common Core, and there's lots of ways to prove that. But are you being able to reinforce Common Core in your content just the same as you would make sure that the classroom teacher reinforces activity brain breaks in their classrooms? And at elementary, that is an active recess. That's active classrooms. And at the secondary level, it's opportunities for kids to drop in for physical activity that can help them be active. Because the research is telling us that around the age of 6th grade, we are losing our kids' interest in physical activity. Some of it is because of puberty, but mostly we are honing in on prepubescent girls who completely take a drop in terms of their interest in physical education and physical activity. And the argument's been made recently that perhaps we should look at some gender-specific things that girls tend to do, like yoga, and bring those back into the curriculum so that kids feel that they are all included in the types of things that they're doing. Just some recent conversation that's gone on, but middle school, very, very important time for kids to be able to do drop-in activities and to be active, and to make sure that we as physical educators engage all children, regardless of gender and ability, confidence, and that kind of thing. So we have to make sure that as a school district, as a school, we impart opportunities for this physical activity to go on. So many of the talking points have to do with what the benefits are for physical activity during the school day, because no teacher wants to hear that they have to give up their time to be able to get kids active. But when you consider what you can do for kids and young adults' cognitive health and what it means to be sedentary in terms of behavior, we can't ignore this part of our school day. One of the striking things for me is that a single session of moderately to intense PA, physical activity, can improve the attention span. And so physical activity solidifies everything the brain has learned in the past 48 hours. And the minutes after a physical education class are the most focused academically that your kids will be all day. So we have an opportunity here to be able to make that happen. And classroom teachers need to hear this research and embrace the research. There are schools, I know there's one school in New York State that their culture is physical education. Like, they're active for several hours a day, and they want to do this experiment where, what will it do to our test scores to have these kids that active? And we await the research on that, and I can probably guess that what you're going to find is that test scores are going to skyrocket. When we think about our children's health and we get people involved in it, you learn subtle things, such as, did you know stress shrinks the part of the brain that enables you to read well? And that physical activity reduces stress, therefore the ability to read well increases. So much great research. Again, I'm going to talk about John Medina's Brain Rules and get you to read that book. And then when you read it, don't let it sit on a shelf. Pass it on to another teacher. Excellent stuff. So there are recommendations here that students should not be inactive in school for more than an hour. the pieces that are offered to me by Jean Blades Madigan. She is the co-founder, the founder of Action-Based Learning, tells us that the research says 17 and a half minutes. And I mentioned that before, that if they're sitting for 17 and a half minutes, then their brains start to lose a little attentiveness. And so they shouldn't be inactive for more than an hour. And that those activity breaks in the classroom should be about 5 to 10 minutes in duration. Lots of companies now are coming out in mass with brain breaks for the classroom. Some that are free, others that you have to pay for. I know that in my PEP grant this time, there's a ton of brain break activities that I'm providing for classroom teachers, because let's face it, the physical education teacher has their job to do, and then have to get to every classroom to teach those breaks and to get those resources and to learn those resources for themselves. That can get pretty daunting. And so there's stuff out there that people have already done, physical education teachers writing them for classroom teachers, activity breaks that last about 5 to 10 minutes in duration. And the impact that that physical activity has is that our kids are more attentive in class, that they are less of a behavior problem, that they know that their focused learning will last longer if they have those activity breaks. There's also research that suggests that children who are physically active for 60 minutes a day and in the classroom, they are absent less from school. They show up for school more if they're physically fit, physically active, and healthy. So the major long-lasting effects of being able to put these brain breaks into the classroom really dictates that we have to do more in that area. So I'm calling you the champion, and I know y'all are probably sick of me saying that. And again, there's not enough of us, but one of the things I think about is that the extent to which we are a champion is not just for our kids, but for your kids in your classroom, but for all of our kids. And so one of the reasons why I fly all over the country and do webinars like this and continue to do the job I want to do in South Orange Maplewood schools is so that each time I reach somebody that wants to be motivated and is passionate and enthusiastic about this, I'm hoping that they'll reach out to the next person. And so the each one reach one mentality starts to go through my head, so that I can gain an army of people who, like me, want to make sure that across this country, physical education is respected as a part of the academic learning of a child, that it is revered as a common piece of what we do in schools, that principals and superintendents and boards of education get it, and that we are in front of those people regularly, speaking eloquently about what it is we do, and defying the naysayers that say physical education will never be on the same plane as those subjects that are Common Core. I do not believe that. Physical activity as part of your daily schedule includes something that is beyond your classroom and recess. So every physical educator who's ever sat at their desks and had lunch at their desks instead of joining the faculty in the faculty room and not going beyond their gymnasium when it comes time to talk to teachers, that is a thing of the past. And even I was guilty of that when I was a young teacher. I always hung with who? I hung with the music teacher and I hung with the art teacher, because those were my buddies. Those were the specialists. Those were the fringe subjects, you know, and nothing could be further from the truth. Now I encourage my teachers to get in the faculty room and, you know, tackle one of these math teachers and say, hey, we have to partner. Okay, maybe they don't tackle them. They have a civil conversation. But, you know, gone are the days where we have to stay in our gyms. Our kids are relying on us to step out of the gymnasium and talk to some other folks. Food services providers. I'm a very close partner with my director of food services, and it is through food service that our recess lunch aides are employed. And so I have a lot of conversations with food service, and I meet once a month with the recess lunch aides, because they also have a pivotal role in making sure not only that recess is safe if it's not run by a teacher or a physical educator, but that there's activities there that kids enjoy, and that they're out there making sure that kids get the very most out of recess. Parents are a very untapped resource, and they are our partners. I've never gone in front of a set of parents or teachers and said, do you think the health of a child is important? No one has ever said no to me, thank goodness. I'm selling health and activity. We are selling health and activity, and no one's not going to buy that. I mean, everybody's going to buy that and be excited about that. When we think of the alternative of physical inactivity and what it means, no one would ever say no to what I'm selling. So, and that's the same for you. So the goal of this whole webinar is to let you know that there are comprehensive school physical activity programs out there, that they are embedded in making sure that we can get kids to that 60 minutes a day of physical activity during the school week, during the weekends, and in the summertime. It is so critically important to their development to do so. And now we are saying, as physical educators, we don't have them for enough time. We need your help. So now I want to make sure that you understand what I mean by active recess or drop-in physical activity. Recess is a very undertapped part of the school day, and that shouldn't be. And it becomes very, very important for kids to be able to choose what activities they do in recess and have that time during the school day for what we call free play. There are lots of examples, as you see here, of the ways that we can purchase resources or get resources online to be able to give kids options about what to do. And then they choose what options that they want. And so a game might be set up like a Foursquare out on the playground, but kids would choose to do Foursquare. There might be painted playground activities like peaceful playgrounds. Kids will choose to do those activities. Lots of stuff available to teachers and lunch aides and physical educators to help recess become something that kids are able to enjoy and have different activities to be able to do every single day. The classroom breaks, some examples of these, and you can Google these, they're really cool. These are the bouts that come with the breaks from the long bouts of sitting, and the energy that kids get after these are immense. So some examples I wanted to share. I just got an email this morning from Spark. Spark is a curriculum and a physical activity set of lessons. They've just introduced what they call Spark ABCs. I spelled that wrong. Did you check my typo? I did that on purpose because I want to make sure everybody was paying attention. These are activity break choices, and you can see more about those on www.sparkpe.org. Gopher Sports has activity cards for the classroom that were developed by Bob Rangrazi. What a fantastic guy, if you've ever read any of his stuff. Awesome. Take 10 is also a whole myriad of activities that you can use. Take 10 meaning 10 minutes for an activity break in the classroom. And I just want to show you an example of what one of those activity breaks might look like. This is activity bingo, where the kids have the bingo card and you read the instructions, and the class does the activity and they do this bingo, and they cover the square that they do with a marking chip. And this activity bingo comes to us from Learning Zone Express. And then we've got a ton of resources for outside and in the classroom that include Hop Sports, which is a entertainment digital interactive company, and they have opportunities for teachers now to log into a website and click on the website and choose from a variety of different brain breaks. And if they have an LCD projector and a screen or a smartboard, someone gets on the screen and says, "Hi, boys and girls, get up at your seats. We're going to start an activity break." And that's Hop Sports brain breaks for the classroom. Also, GeoMotion, which is another company, has something called GeoMotion TV, and they have someone on the television doing these classroom breaks. They also have GeoMotion Mats for the gymnasium that help to integrate math and language arts. So those mats are pretty cool as well. You can Google GeoMotion. You'll be doing a lot of Googling. You're Googlers. Say that 10 times fast. And then, of course, there's the famous peaceful playgrounds that we have in our schools, at our Tuscan school and in many others. Recess that helps kids to be able to choose activities. And as you see there, there's a picture of some activities on the playground for peaceful playgrounds. There's also all kinds of hunting and dividing you can do in the classroom with classroom teachers that you can share, where this activity is when kids will write a word on an index card, and then another set of cards will have the definitions, and the kids have to be up out of their seats and match their word with their definitions. Mobile math, just as you do it with definitions, you can do it with math. Having kids show on their fingers the number of math, the math number by raising their hands and showing the number on their fingers, or as in this example, dividing that class in half and making sure that kids can jump up and down to cite the numbers that they would mean for the addition, the subtraction, the division, the multiplication. Cool stuff, really fun, cool stuff. Now, there's a lot of academics behind physical activity. We need to make sure people know these things, because the buy-in comes when a teacher can say, I really believe in what it is you're telling me because I've seen it as the truth. Being physically active does not lower a child's academic achievement. There's been lots of drama over physical education time taking away from academics. Nothing can be farther from the truth. To the contrary, the breaks remove barriers to learning, such as low energy, having behavior issues, inattentiveness, and attendance problems. And of course, physical activity, just as in the examples I used, do teach academic content. And we have to remember, you know, if you're an elementary teacher, this comes easy to you because you know this stuff. But this is not just for elementary school. We need this stuff in the middle school and the high school as well. So what is it I want to tell you before I take questions? You need to be an advocate. I am pausing for dramatic effect. We need to make sure that these stakeholders understand that physical education is not what their experiences were 20 years ago. Because when people make decisions about physical education, they make it based on their own experiences. And we need to give them new experiences. We need to show them what physical education is in 2013. I need for you to share these resources provided and look at all those websites I talked to you about and be a Let's Move Active School, because we need to start to promote physical activity during the school day, before the school day, after and on the weekends. So when you hang up with me in this webinar 6.5 minutes from now, you have to go to www.letsmoveschools.org and sign up. I also want to encourage you to keep being a champion. Give of yourself and of your time and of your special gifts to students, because those students don't have your voice. You are their voice, and they are so counting on you. Okay? Promise? I don't know if you're saying yes, but I hope you are. Okay. So thank you so much for being with me today. I want to leave a few minutes for some questions if you have them. Carrie, are you there? Carrie's not there?
I'm there. I needed to click it. I had it on mute so I didn't interrupt your wonderful presentation.
Now tell me that I was muted the whole time and nobody heard anything. Oh my God.
No. Let's see. I'm going to open up a mic here. Is it Megegura? Are you there? Yes. Do you see, she has questions for you, Judy? Can you see that on the screen?
I don't, but could you repeat it?
Well, one is, she says that our school is well on its way being a physically active school.
Hooray!
Yay! We want to go further and apply for the PEP grant. We do not, however, we do not have a district grant writer. Can it be done without one? They're very intimidated. What can you say to her?
Yeah. So thank you first, and congratulations to your school district. If you're well on your way, then thank you so much from the bottom of my heart about that. In terms of a PEP grant, the first thing I would say is look for local funding first. Local funding is usually a great way to be able to get small dollars quickly and more easily than a PEP grant, because you can imagine how competitive it is. And then the next step is to look toward national partners of the PEP grant, which would include places like NFL Play 60, which is offering lots of grants. AFERD on their website, www.aferd.org, has an area where grant availability information is there that helps you to get funding from, let's say, a Nike or a General Mills. Those are the second tier of being able to get dollars that are a little easier, that don't really require a grant writer because the application is pretty straightforward. The set of material that you basically need to write any of these grants is basically how many kids, how many schools, how many phys ed teachers, what is your rate of free and reduced lunch in your district. And by the way, you do not have to be a high level of free and reduced lunch in your district to get this funding. You only need to be committed to comprehensive physical activity. So don't think everybody has to be poor out there to get the money. That's not true. My district is not poor, and we just won $1.55 million. So then let's move up to the PEP grant real quick. The PEP grant, I got a writer for the PEP grant, but many of our partners in physical education who are physical education vendors who stand to make a lot of money in your PEP grant offer you grant writing services. So a place like Project Adventure has a grant writer that they will assign to you and help you, provided that perhaps you use Project Adventure in your grant proposal. Polar Electro, which is the maker of the famous activity watch, the heart rate monitor watch, they also have a grant writer. Some of our sport equipment vendors, like Go for Sport, can put you in touch with a grant writer. So a grant writer can get expensive, and I hired a grant writer, and it was a big risk. She did a nice job, but there are other ways that you can get into this funding stream that don't require a lot of paperwork and a lot of assistance from a grant writer. So I hope I answered your question.
She also had another question, and it was a little bit more specific, and which was, did your PEP grant pay for walking tracks, or do they walk on fields? We would love to get a track built at our elementary school, but funding is a problem.
Right. So the PEP grant is not permitted to build any permanent structures or do any construction. From what I understand, now I do have walking tracks that were put in before this, but from what I understand, you can make a trail where you have soft chips on a trail that gets burrowed in, and as long as it's something, what they say is if it's something that can be removed and replaced, you can do it through the PEP grant. So for example, if I wanted to build a playground, I could take that out of the ground if I needed to. You're allowed to do that. Project Adventure, we put poles in the ground at the high school. They come in and the poles could come out if they needed to. You can't like build a pool or a gym with it in terms of PEP grant funding, but you certainly can do a walking track that doesn't require you to pour any cement or tar. And that's why I say you can build a path, and then if you put like soft chips on it, that would be allowed in the PEP grant.
Well, I'm going to jump in on this one for peaceful playgrounds, and this is what I did. I'm here in California, and we don't have gyms or anything. We basically have blacktop and grass area, and for some reason, at all the schools that I worked, they always watered the grass so much they were always muddy. So I always kept my students on the blacktop, and with peaceful playgrounds, they have one of their markings as a perimeter line. And I always had that painted at all my schools, and that became the track just by having a line painted on the perimeter of my blacktop. And it really made a big difference. It did in all the schools that I taught. And that was something, it was just painting on the facility that I already had, but it gave them a place to walk, and it made a difference.
Very cool.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and let's see. You're very welcome. She said thank you to you, Judy. So, and she appreciates the helpful information.
You're welcome.
Yes. Well, this is the conclusion of the webinar, and thank you very, very much for attending. Thank you, Judy, for all your wonderful information and unbelievable passion. For me, you hit me to my heart. It's my passion as well, and so it's just a wonderful information. And I am going to add, be a champion and be an advocate. And there are just a few of us that are making a difference, so don't give up. So it is wonderful. The other thing I would like to mention, if you would like a handout for that goes along with this presentation today, please go ahead and email me, and you have my email address. It's carrief@Peaceful Playgrounds, and I'll be happy to send that to you. Do you have any closing remarks, Judy?
Just to make sure that people know that there's a long school year ahead, and to keep that passion and enthusiasm going. Children are relying on you, and you have to see the world through their eyes. Thank you for continuing to do that, and it was a pleasure to be with everybody today.
Well, thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.